Child, if you keep planting doubt, don't be surprised when flowers never bloom. Shift your soul's weather. Let sunshine soak your thoughts. What you believe, you become. Speak with grace. Walk with fire. The world bends to bold minds. Change your mindset and you'll change the shape of your sky. Mindset shapes destiny. Thoughts birth reality. This simple yet profound truth holds the power to transform the trajectory of a person's life. What we believe about ourselves, the world, and what's possible carves the path we walk. It is not circumstance alone that determines our fate, but how we perceive that circumstance, and more importantly, how we respond to it from the inside out. A mindset is more than a collection of thoughts. It is a lens, a filter, a quiet architect that draws the blueprint of our reality. What we consistently think, we begin to believe. What we believe, we begin to act upon. And what we act upon again and again becomes the life we live. This is not magic, but the quiet machinery of the mind in motion. When a person holds a fixed mindset, believing their talents, intelligence, or potential are set in stone, they unconsciously build barriers around themselves. They say, "I'm not smart enough," or "people like me don't succeed," and these phrases become walls. These beliefs do not reflect truth. They reflect fear, conditioning, and unchallenged narratives. A person with this mindset often backs away from challenge, avoids failure at all costs, and seeks constant validation. In doing so, they rob themselves of the very friction that forges greatness. But when a person chooses a growth mindset, the air shifts. Suddenly, failure becomes feedback. Effort becomes noble. Challenges become invitations. The story begins to unfold differently. A person says, "I may not know how yet, but I will learn." That simple shift in language reshapes the mind's terrain. It opens space. It creates possibility. And where possibility blooms, so does resilience, so does creativity, so does success. Not always by the world's standards, but always by the soul's. The mind listens to every word you say. Tell it you are not enough, and it will shrink to match your despair. Tell it you are capable, evolving, worthy of growth, and it will rise. The mind was never meant to imprison you. It was meant to guide you, to serve you, to dream with you. But it needs direction, and direction comes from awareness. To change your mindset, you must first observe it. What are the silent scripts you run daily? Do you speak more limitation than liberation? Do you speak fear before faith? Do you look in the mirror and see a life weighed down by doubt, or a soul rising in its own becoming? Your mindset is not what you say once in a while. It's what you rehearse silently over and over, even when no one's listening. But the body listens, the spirit listens, the world listens. Thoughts are not just fleeting clouds, they are seeds. And every seed, if watered long enough, grows into a forest of light or of shadow. Choose carefully, water wisely. Choose thoughts that honor the person you are becoming, not the one you've been told to be. Because someone else's definition of your limits doesn't have to become your truth. Someone else's ceiling doesn't have to be your sky. Reality is fluid. It bends to vision, to persistence, to courage. It is not fixed unless you fix it with your thinking. Many people walk through life blindfolded, not by fate, but by their own beliefs. They settle, they shrink, they wait. But life does not wait for you to feel ready. It waits for you to believe differently. And once you do, even the doors you thought were locked begin to creak open, not because they changed, but because you did. If you want to change your life, don't start with your circumstances. Start with your thoughts. Don't chase freedom outside of you. Nurture it within. Speak life over your mind. Treat your thoughts like the sacred architecture of the world you want to live in. What you rehearse, you realize. What you think with conviction, you eventually become. So the next time you feel stuck, Don't only look at what's happening to you, look at what you're believing about it. Ask yourself if the thought you're thinking lifts you or locks you in. Ask if it comes from your higher self or from an old wound. Then choose. Choose the thought that calls you forward. Choose the thought that grows wings, not weight. Because mindset shapes destiny and thoughts, they do not just pass through, they plant, they root, they build, and one day they become the home you live in, so build wisely. Fixed beliefs are silent prisons. Growth comes from release. These words are not just a poetic arrangement. They carry a truth that many live but few recognize. Fixed beliefs are the bars we can't always see, the quiet whispers that tell us, this is just the way I am, or that's how it's always been. These are the chains that do not rattle, the walls we decorate rather than dismantle. They feel like comfort, but they are cages. A fixed belief is a decision we made once, maybe in childhood, maybe in trauma, maybe in fear, and we never questioned it again. It might sound like, I'm not good at relationships, I don't deserve happiness, or people can't be trusted. We repeat it so often it becomes truth, not universal truth, but our truth. The problem is that what we accept as truth begins to dictate the way we move, speak, love, and grow, or fail to. Fixed beliefs are not just thoughts, they are programs. They run in the background, coloring every interaction, every opportunity, every decision. They influence whether we raise our hand or stay silent, whether we walk away or hold on, whether we try again or give up before we even begin. Most dangerously, they operate silently. We often don't know they're there. We just think the world is the way it is. But the world isn't fixed. Life is movement. It breathes, shifts, transforms, and we are part of it. Yet when we hold fixed beliefs, we step out of that movement. We try to stay still in a river that's always flowing. No wonder we feel stuck, exhausted, resistant. The current is calling us to release what no longer serves. Growth does not come from clinging to certainty. It comes from daring to question what we've outgrown. There's a reason fixed beliefs feel safe. They protect us from uncertainty. They give us a script to follow when life feels chaotic. But safety and growth rarely live in the same room. You cannot stretch and stay the same. You cannot bloom and hold on to the bud. To grow, we must release. And release does not mean denial. It means surrendering the illusion that our way of thinking is the only way. Growth begins the moment we allow ourselves to say, maybe I was wrong, not in shame, but in liberation. Maybe I don't have to carry this belief anymore. Maybe the story I've told myself about love, about success, about worth, isn't the only version. Maybe I've been trying to build a future on foundations that were never mine to begin with. Some will resist this idea. They'll say, but this is who I am. No, it's who you believed you were. And belief can be changed. The mind is not a stone, it is clay. It can be molded, softened, reshaped by new experience, deeper wisdom, and courageous questioning. The moment you believe you can evolve, you already have. Release is not a one-time act, it's a practice. It's choosing each day to notice the beliefs that feel tight, heavy, closed. It's asking, is this belief helping me grow or holding me hostage? It's being willing to trade comfort for truth and safety for freedom. Because only in freedom can we create. Only in freedom can we love fully, lead boldly, and live authentically. Growth demands space. And space comes when we release the unnecessary. It is not about becoming someone else. It's about uncovering who we were before fear and conditioning wrote our script. The more we release, the more we return. Return to truth, to presence, to power. Because the deepest part of you is not fixed. It is fluid, open, infinite. It is not confined by what you once believed. So the next time you find yourself stuck, ask, what belief am I still holding that no longer fits the person I'm becoming? Then breathe, loosen your grip, and release. Because those fixed beliefs, those silent prisons, have nothing on the freedom that waits once you let them go. Fear is a false prophet. Courage rewrites the future. It speaks in convincing tones, dressed in the language of logic and protection, whispering warnings not born of wisdom but of wounds. It tells you it sees what's coming, that it knows the end before you've begun, and it urges you to stay where it's safe. But fear is a liar. It predicts failure before you've tried. It forecasts rejection before you've spoken. It draws dark clouds over skies that haven't even dawned. And if you follow it, your future becomes a repetition of the past, not because destiny demands it, but because fear convinced you to never test it. Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly, tugging at your gut, disguising itself as reason. It says, don't apply for that. Don't say how you feel. Don't dream too big, and don't get your hopes up. It tells you it's keeping you safe, but really, it's keeping you small. It trades your growth for comfort and labels the exchange as wisdom. But growth never felt like comfort, and comfort never changed the world. There's a difference between true danger and imagined risk. Courage knows the difference. Courage feels fear but doesn't obey it. It stands anyway. It speaks anyway. It tries anyway. It doesn't wait for the absence of fear. It walks through it with shaking hands and a steady heart. Because courage doesn't come from confidence. It comes from conviction. It comes from deciding that your purpose is louder than your panic, that your dreams matter more than your doubts, that the life you want is worth the risk of failure, rejection, embarrassment, whatever shadows fear tries to cast. Fear has never built a future worth living in. It has only repeated cycles, shrunk souls, and silenced brilliance. But courage builds futures. Courage writes stories. Courage opens doors that fear swore were locked. When you act with courage, you become a co-author of your life. You stop letting fear be the narrator, stop letting it write the same tired ending. You take the pen back, you say, no, not this time, and you write something new. People often wait for fear to go away before they take a leap. But fear doesn't leave. It waits. It tests. It watches. It will always show up where there is risk, where there is potential, where there is transformation. Not because it's wise, but because it's scared of losing control. It is an old voice trying to protect an old version of you. But you're not that person anymore. You're growing, evolving, rising, and that old fear doesn't know how to speak to who you are becoming. Courage doesn't mean you don't hear the fear. It means you don't believe it. You listen, you acknowledge it, and then you move forward anyway. That's how you build a new future. Not by erasing fear, but by refusing to let it decide what you do. Courage shows up in the decision to keep going, even when your legs are trembling. It shows up when you speak your truth, even when your voice cracks. It shows up in silence, in action, in the small choices no one sees but you feel deep in your soul. Fear told the Wright brothers they would crash. Courage said, fly anyway. Fear told artists, they'll laugh. Courage said, create anyway. Fear said, you'll fail. Courage whispered, maybe, but what if you succeed? Every major breakthrough in history was preceded by fear, and still someone moved forward. That's the blueprint. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage that refused to bow. Fear is not your enemy, but it is not your oracle either. Don't let it predict a future you haven't dared to shape. Don't let it trick you into playing small in a life meant to be lived wide. Let courage guide you. Let it rewrite the narrative that fear has been recycling for years. Your future does not belong to the voice that trembles. It belongs to the one that dares. Because in the end, the life you want is not waiting beyond fear. It is waiting through it. And the only way out is forward, with courage in your step, clarity in your spirit, and a refusal to let fear write the ending. Let courage take the pen. Let courage write the future. Adversity isn't an anchor, it's a chisel. While many see hardship as a weight dragging them beneath the surface, it is in truth a tool, shaping, sculpting, revealing. It does not come to break us, but to carve away what we are not, so that what we truly are can emerge. It may not feel like grace in the moment, but in hindsight, adversity often becomes the hand that molded our strength, character, and clarity. We are not born knowing who we are. We discover it, often through the fire. Comfort may lull us into stillness, but it rarely transforms. Growth happens in the tension, in the pressure, in the moments when life pulls us beyond our known limits. Adversity arrives not to trap us, but to test and refine. It reveals what's brittle and what's unbreakable. It shows us the stories we've outgrown and the truths we've ignored. The chisel doesn't destroy the stone. It reveals the sculpture within. In the face of pain, we often ask, why me? But perhaps the more powerful question is, what is this shaping in me? That shift, away from victimhood and toward transformation, unlocks a deeper wisdom. We stop resisting life's storms and start learning how to stand in them. Adversity is not a punishment. It's a mirror. It shows us what we believe, where we hide, what we've been avoiding, and once we see those truths, we are no longer the same. The most resilient people are not those who avoided hardship, but those who allowed hardship to teach them. They learned not to let pain become identity. They understood that wounds can become wisdom and scars can become maps, not of where we've been hurt, but of where we've healed. Every loss, betrayal, failure, or detour carries within it a gift, not wrapped in ease, but embedded in experience. That gift is perspective, depth, empathy, and strength. Think of the seed buried in soil. Darkness surrounds it, pressure weighs down. Yet in that buried space, it begins to transform. The same is true of us. The seasons that feel like burial are often the ones preparing us to bloom. But we must resist the lie that adversity means the end. It doesn't. It often marks the beginning of becoming. There is a power in being chipped away by life, not because we enjoy the breaking, but because of what's revealed beneath the surface. Our raw selves, our authentic voice, our unshaken values. When everything false falls apart, what remains is real. And in that realness, there is a peace not dependent on circumstances, a strength not loud, but rooted, a purpose born not in comfort, but in challenge. We often glorify the final product, the success story, the achievement, the comeback, but forget that every polished diamond was once buried deep and pressured long. Every strong soul was once brought to their knees. Every wise voice was once silenced by fear. Adversity doesn't spare anyone, but it offers everyone a choice: to resist and remain unchanged, or to open and be transformed. The anchor weighs you down to keep you still. The chisel shapes you to move forward. Adversity asks you to let go of old identities, outdated beliefs, and superficial strength. It strips away the unnecessary, the performative, the fragile. It forces you to look inward, to rebuild from a deeper place. And though the process is painful, the outcome is authentic. You become someone who doesn't just survive, you carry wisdom. You don't just return, you rise different. People often try to avoid adversity, but avoidance doesn't build resilience. Facing it does. Moving through it does. Letting it do its work without letting it harden your heart. That's the alchemy. That's how you turn pain into purpose, confusion into clarity, and suffering into spiritual muscle. So when life brings you to a breaking point, pause, breathe, and remember, this is not the end. This is the carving. This is the shaping. The masterpiece is not ruined by the blow of the chisel. It is made by it. And the person you are becoming will one day thank the process, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Language molds perspective. Speak light, not limits. Words are more than tools of expression. They are instruments of creation. Every sentence we speak, every thought we put into words, shapes the way we perceive ourselves and the world. The language we use becomes the lens through which we see possibility, people, and purpose. It either uplifts or undermines. It either expands our vision or shrinks it. Most people do not realize how much power lives in their everyday language. A single phrase can build a bridge or burn one. A single word can heal or wound. The stories we tell ourselves and others are written in language, and those stories define the boundaries of our reality. Say, "I can't," and your brain stops looking for solutions. Say, "I'm trying," and your spirit keeps pushing forward. Say, "I always fail," and you train your mind to anticipate failure. Say, "I'm learning," and you open the door to progress. Words are spells, not in the fantasy sense, but in the way they influence energy, emotion, and direction. We speak our reality into being. The mind listens, the heart listens, the soul listens, and most importantly, the world listens. What you repeat becomes reinforced. What you affirm becomes habit. And what you declare, boldly or subtly, begins to shape how you act, react, and evolve. Limitations often begin in language. We tell ourselves we're not creative, not smart enough, not worthy of love, not meant for greatness. These are not facts. They are inherited phrases, passed down from parents, society, systems, and old fears. But just because you've repeated a sentence for years doesn't mean it's true. You have the power to choose new language. You can rewrite your vocabulary of self. Instead of "I'm broken," say "I'm healing." Instead of "I'm stuck," say "I'm pausing." Instead of "I failed," say "I learned." The shift may seem small, but the impact is monumental. Speaking light doesn't mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It means choosing words that create movement, not paralysis. It means naming reality with hope, describing challenges with resilience, and affirming your capacity to rise even when it's hard. Speaking light is not about false positivity, it's about empowered perspective. You can say, "This is difficult, and I am finding my way through it." You can say, "I'm afraid, but I am not giving up." That kind of language keeps the fire burning. The words we use with others also hold great responsibility. When we speak to a child, a partner, a friend, a stranger, our words can either nourish or deplete. Telling someone "you always mess up" locks them into shame. Saying "you're growing through this" gives them room to breathe. We often underestimate the influence our words have on other people's self-concept. A sentence of encouragement can echo for years. A sentence of cruelty can linger just as long. Speak as if your words are planting seeds, because they are. Even the way we talk about our future can set the tone for what's possible. Saying "I hope it works out" carries uncertainty. Saying "I'm committed to making this happen" carries intention. Language doesn't just describe reality, it steers it. Your words are not just echoes of your thoughts. They are signals to your subconscious and declarations to the universe. Choose them with care. Listen to your inner dialogue. Do you speak limits or light? Do you use language that anchors you in past pain or language that lifts you toward your higher self? Start noticing the patterns. You may find that the biggest barrier in your path is not circumstance, but self-talk. And once you see it, you can shift it. You can begin to tell a new story, not based on fear, but on freedom. Language is one of the few tools every person has access to. You don't need wealth, power, or status to speak light. You only need intention. You only need to believe that your words matter, that they carry energy, shape thought, and influence action. When you begin to speak with that awareness, you will notice the world respond differently. not because the world changed, but because your perception did. So speak as though your voice creates waves. Speak as though someone is listening who needs hope. Speak to yourself with the same compassion you give others. And when you find yourself tempted to shrink your dreams with small language, pause and choose light, because your words are the blueprint of your becoming. And when you speak light, you illuminate the path forward, not just for you, but for everyone who hears you. Liberation begins in the mirror, not in revolutions, not in applause, not in the shifting of laws or the approval of others, but in the quiet, personal confrontation between you and your own reflection. That mirror does not lie, it does not flatter or soften. It shows you what you carry, what you avoid, what you fear, and what you pretend to be. And somewhere in that raw stillness, behind the masks and beneath the performance, is where freedom begins to stir. Many people search for liberation outside of themselves. They look for it in relationships, in recognition, in status, in escape. They think, if I leave this place, if I change this job, if I find someone who understands me, then I will be free. But no matter where they go, they find themselves again. The same patterns, the same doubts, the same stories playing on repeat. Because true freedom is not about changing your surroundings, it's about changing your relationship with yourself. You can't run from the mirror, it follows you. The mirror is not just glass, it's a symbol of truth. It forces us to pause and really see ourselves, to ask, am I being honest with who I am? Am I living in alignment with what I believe, or have I made peace with pretending? So many of us are performing, smiling while aching, achieving while empty, giving while withering. But liberation does not bloom from pretending. It comes from standing naked in truth, unafraid to meet the parts of us we've buried. That meeting is sacred. It's where healing starts. It's where the masks come off, the armor is set down, and the real conversation begins. Not the loud conversation you have with the world, but the intimate one you have with yourself. Why do I keep repeating this cycle? What do I actually want? What have I accepted that is slowly killing me? These are hard questions, but the mirror demands them, because only truth can set you free. Liberation begins in the mirror when you stop hiding from your own power, when you stop editing yourself to fit into someone else's version of acceptable, when you look into your own eyes and say, I'm done apologizing for being. That moment, that defiant whisper of self-acceptance, is when the ground beneath you shifts. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to speak up when you've been silent too long. Sometimes it's walking away from what's familiar but no longer nourishing. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself for what you didn't know and letting the past be a chapter, not your entire book. It is in these tender, brave acts that liberation builds its foundation. The mirror also reveals the lies you've believed, that you're not enough, that you're too much, that your worth is tied to your productivity, your body, your relationship status, your pain. It's not. Your worth is inherent, but it's easy to forget that when you've spent years absorbing messages that told you otherwise. The mirror invites you to question those messages, to ask, whose voice is that? Is it mine or something I inherited? When you identify the origin of the lie, you can begin to release it. And every lie you release makes more room for freedom. But liberation is not just about confronting pain. It's also about reclaiming joy. When you look in the mirror and see someone worthy of love, someone capable of becoming, someone who has survived and still hopes, that's liberation too. To see beauty where once you saw only flaw, to see progress instead of failure. To see someone who is not broken, but becoming. That is freedom. The mirror does not promise perfection, it reflects presence. And presence is where liberation lives. When you stop running from your reflection and start sitting with it, something powerful happens. You start coming home to yourself. You stop asking others to validate what only you can confirm. You stop waiting for the world to make space for you, and you begin to take up space, first in your own eyes, then everywhere else. That's where it begins. In the mirror, with truth, with tenderness, with courage, not by changing who you are, but by remembering who you were before you were told who to be, before the shame, before the doubt, before the world handed you a script that never fit your soul. You return to yourself, you look and you say, I see you, and for perhaps the first time, you really do. The path to transformation begins within. Each idea, changing your mindset, releasing fixed beliefs, walking through fear with courage, embracing adversity as a tool, speaking light over limits, and standing honestly before your own reflection, forms a single thread in the fabric of self-liberation. These are not isolated truths. They are interconnected invitations to rise. You are not bound by your past, your pain, or the voices that taught you to shrink. You are the author, the sculptor, the speaker, the mirror. Your thoughts build the foundation, your words carve the shape, and your courage lights the way. Liberation is not granted. It is claimed moment by moment by those bold enough to believe they were never meant to live caged. The world will meet you at the level of your self-belief. So choose to believe deeply, walk bravely, speak powerfully, and stand fully in the truth of who you are. That is the beginning of everything.